If you're depressed, avoid dark places. You won't like what is waiting for you there. Written by richardlovesspace. It's been some time before I'd gotten a chance to go back home. I went to Canada for my university and am still looking for work. The economy was down the shitter, my friends from uni all dispersed into their own adult lives, and I was stuck alone in my apartment, staring at a dwindling list of relevant job offers online. I'd started staying up later and later, where the first sunlight was usually also the last natural light I would see before crashing on my couch. I was at my limit, not enjoying much of anything, and all my senses feeling numb. I was just pushing on through to the next day. I decided to save up some money to return back to my family for a short while. Just a few weeks to decompress and see if that would help me. I come from one of the smaller cities in Midwestern Germany. There's absolutely nothing notable about it other than being located near the forest where my ancestors fought back the Romans. But the people are nice, as far as Germans go. We are a weird people, I admit. Outwardly cold towards those we don't know until we get together for a few beers or a piece of cake, after which you would think we were friends our entire lives. But that's exactly what I wanted then. If I managed to get out of my hole to grab a coffee, those trained smiles just reminded me of how miserable I was. I needed the gruffness of my fatherland and the reality of my own family. My arrival in the first few days went about as well as I'd anticipated. I was greeted with hugs and kisses and had to tell the same stories about 100 times before crashing on my old bed. Even at home, I barely managed to get outside. I'd stay up, smoke, and drink on the balcony before letting sleep carry me through the day. My family was understandably worried. I hadn't really told them the extent of how shitty I'd been feeling. They tried their best, considering they didn't really know how to deal with my mental status. It wasn't their fault. Their words weren't reaching me. At least, they managed to figure out pretty quickly to drop the subject for now, attempting instead to simply cheer me up by being themselves and acting as if everything was normal. It worked for me, even if it wasn't quite the reality check I needed. I even managed to get up early enough to see them at breakfast. I still remember the soft smiles they gave me when they saw me. I shrugged, sat down, and ate some eggs. One day, an old high school friend, Max, who had also managed to make his way back home and had heard of my arrival, hit me up via text and asked if I wanted to go on a walk. I wanted to decline, but at the same time I felt bad enough that I had never once texted him, and now here he was, inviting me. We used to live so close together, so all he needed to do was pick me up at home. We decided to retread our old childhood stomping grounds in the forest that bordered our suburb. It's the same forest I mentioned earlier, by the way. As he rang the doorbell, I was overcome by this terrible anxiety. How would he see me? What would he think of me? I opened the door and he immediately smiled and said, "How are you, you fucking ghost?" I couldn't help but grin and we hugged. "Could be better, bro. You know how it is," I replied. "Ain't that the truth?" He chuckled and beckoned me outside. I will be paraphrasing some of what was said as I'm translating it. Otherwise, I would just sound off. As we hiked through the downtrodden dirt paths, through the luscious trees, bright green, and alight with the sounds of birds chirping away, we barely said a word to each other. I guess he understood what I was going through, perhaps heard the bare minimum from whoever told him I was even here. At the time, I thought he pitied me, and that's why he came to pick me up. We exchanged the odd question about what we were doing. For me, nothing. He was trained to become a nurse, which honestly surprised me, seeing as he was always more one for making jokes and sleeping in class rather than being passionate about helping people. But who was I to judge? We decided to walk up the hill further into the woods. Unlike the miles and miles of dark green conifers you might be picturing from North America, this forest was more of a mixture of beeches, birches, and fir trees. Most areas are well lit, as the sun has enough space to seep through. However, I've always felt it gives you a false sense of security. You think you can see everything, but in the end, it is still you, alone in the woods, dismissing every shadow or sign of movement as leaves and branches, when in reality, you really have no idea what might be lurking behind those tree trunks. Another aspect is that while the paths seem to form a natural clearing, it is just as easy to get lost, mistaking a more flat patch on the ground for a man-made path just because the leaves don't obscure the sun, letting this forest swallow you up with ease. I realized then that I'd never been aware of that until now. I've always seen the woods as our kingdom, as nature inviting us to be free and just be children. Something wrong? Max asked. Forest seems different. Might just be me, though. Max nodded and replied. I get what you mean. Seems less friendly now that we're older, doesn't it? Exactly. Max stopped for a second and frowned before suggesting, Listen, one thing is actually different. You remember the meadow with the river and the bridge? Sure. You recall that concrete bunker that was next to it? We always just thought it was something to do with the power grid. I did remember it. I remember the way it stood out as an ugly minimalist block, threatening the serenity of nature. The graffiti didn't help. We would usually stay away, not minding it. I nodded. Well, that one is gone. But, there's another one. Popped up a while ago. Don't know exactly when. Lisa's aunt noticed it while walking her dog. Want to check it out? I raised my eyebrow. Why would we want to do that? I don't know, man. I'm trying my best here. I could sense his desperation, reminding me of my parents seeing me every night before they went to bed, asking me to hang out with them. I shrugged, grabbing his shoulders, and said, Lead the way then. He gave me a weak smile, and we walked on. Indeed, the structure was, in terms of how it was built, identical to the one we saw as kids. We walked around it, checking every angle. There really was nothing remarkable about it, but something was finally stirring inside my cold heart. A sense of adventure, something new and unexpected to be discovered. I didn't know how long it would last, but I wanted to cling onto it and keep it inside me for as long as I could. We found a door on one side reading, No authorized access. Max poked me and asked, Is it just me, or does this door look different from the old one? It did. There's a handle on this one and no lock. The old one just had a keyhole. I suppose it was so it was harder to open from the outside. I looked around trying to get a better lay of the land. Have you noticed anything else? Max tried to follow my eyes. What? There are no power lines or towers. The old one had those too. Maybe it's underground. Save the trees and all that. Maybe, I responded. Max took another walk around the box, shouting from the other side. Nobody has tagged it yet either. Can't be that old then. Come back and give me a lift. Max helped me onto the roof. There was nothing, not even an HVAC box. Bro, what do you see? Nothing, Max. Not a thing. I jumped back down and looked at my friend. We both started to grin. This little detour just turned into a bona fide mystery. Guess there's only one thing to do now, I said, looking at the door handle. Guess you're right. We both didn't move a muscle, exchanging glances. Max took a step back, holding his hands up. Why don't you go ahead? Wimp. Do it then, big guy. All right. I slowly placed my hands on the handle as if it may be electrified and tried twisting it. Nothing happened. I could feel Max deflate behind me, but I wouldn't give up. I tried it with some more force and noticed the door buckle. I wouldn't stop now. I was feeling good. I kept pushing and pulling, using my foot against the wall for more force. Finally, the door gave way, and with it, I fell backward, crashing into leaves and dirt. Max was equally shocked and amused. Okay then, big guy. You go to the gym? Not really. The door must have just rusted shut, I said as I got back up and dusted myself off. We both took a look inside, but couldn't see anything. But it was more than that. There was a thick wall of darkness just past the precipice of the doorway. No light from the forest dared to enter it. Even the birds seemed frightened, enveloping both of us in absolute silence. We tried to make anything out inside, but we couldn't. It was just black. I got out my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it inside. It barely managed to penetrate, forcing me to get closer and closer. I felt a chill come from this portal I had just opened up. Nah, man, this ain't right. Max huffed behind me. Just give me a second. I got as close to the opening as I was comfortable with and held my phone out. My fingers brushed past the boundary, and it was like running them under icy cold water. I shuddered, but tried to steady my arm. I can make out a hallway. That's it. I think it splits just a bit further in, I told Max. Cool. You want to lead the way then? You brought me here. Why don't you go first? I opened the damn thing. Exactly. Finders keepers. Aren't nurses supposed to be able to be brave or something? First of all, nurse in training. Second of all, you're thinking of fighter fighters. And thirdly, what the fuck do you mean brave? It's like staring into the Marianas Trench. This doesn't seem to be natural. I mean, it's not. Somebody built it. Yeah. That somebody clearly doesn't want anybody to enter. I got agitated. He had brought me here, agreed to open up the door. Why did he want to ruin this for me? Isn't this what he wanted? Isn't this what everybody at home wants for me? To finally fucking act and not just waste away in my room? You can stand guard, I replied gruffly. Max put his hands in the air, took another look at me and said, You owe me a drink after this, before taking his phone and turning the flashlight on. I felt my anger vanish and we proceeded inside. We were definitely not dressed warm enough. As soon as both of us passed through the doorway, we took one last look at the forest behind us. There was nobody there to save us. We were alone. Maybe I shouldn't make Max do this. He was right. Something was very wrong here. I could feel my heartbeat quickening and my confidence replaced with fear. Max took the first step forward and said, "At least the door won't suddenly close on us." "I suppose so," I replied, following after him, hyping myself up. I wanted this. I needed this, I kept thinking to myself. The first few meters were easy, as long as the light and escape were still clearly behind us. But we both felt it. There was a pressure here, and the further we went in, the more it told us to leave. We made it towards the end, and indeed there was a split. "Which way, boss?" Max asked. I paused, shining my light in both directions. They looked to be more of the same. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I asked Max. Max gave me an agitated look inside. "You wanted this, right? And I don't abandon my friends." His words stung. I looked at my feet in embarrassment. "I'm sorry I didn't text or call." I could make out his smile, and he replied, slapping my back. "It's alright, bro. I get it. Gotta make up for lost time now, at least." "Yeah," I responded weakly. "So which way?" "No idea. Got a preference?" "Well, the left one is a shade of pitch black, and the right is another shade." "I'll pick right. Always my favorite side." "Right it is," I proclaimed. We walked on, leaving the safety of the front door only in our memories. Slowly inching forward, our flashlights barely made a dent into the void. There was no glass, no doors, just concrete and the linoleum floor. After a little while, Max tapped me on my back. "Hey, do you notice something?" I stopped. "No. What's up?" "This whole box wasn't more than a few meters wide, right? It did take me like 2 or 3 steps to get around." "Well," he held his arms up. "How long have we been walking in here?" "Exactly. How the fuck is that possible?" "It isn't." Not only did the structure come out of nowhere, it also had complete disregard for the laws of physics. First, the light, which we simply waved away, but now this? I was beginning to wonder whether this was worth it after all, torn between my need for excitement and a basic fear of the unknown. As if to answer us, our flashlights made out an irregularity ahead of us. It was another door. We made our way closer to the door, and Max slowly tried out the handle. The door opened into more black nothingness, where this time our light managed to illuminate even less. Max took another step, and suddenly he was gone. I blinked for a second, only to hear him scream and hear his voice draw further and further away from me. Running towards the doorframe, I only caught a glimpse of a bright dot falling further and further into an abyss we had both failed to see. "Max! Max!" I called out to him several times, but he was nowhere to be seen. Even his flashlight had been swallowed up. I continued shouting out his name, but there was no response. I was suddenly very alone, very scared, and very much ashamed. Max was down there because of me, because I craved adventure so much in my boring, unfulfilled existence that I was willing to not only risk my life, but his as well. We both looked inside this alien box and knew something was wrong, yet I decided to go in anyway. Even if it wasn't dangerous, it was still likely very illegal. I've destroyed public property, entered a sealed-off area, and made my friend an accessory to my crime. A friend who had just been swallowed up by what looked to be a night sky without stars, utterly devoid of life. Then I heard it. It was a faint moan, barely audible, but coming from below. I peeked my head past the doorway, again shouting, "Max? Are you there?" The only response was more moaning. I grabbed my phone and tried to find anything to guide me. It couldn't just be a giant hole, could it? I nearly dropped my phone the more desperately I tried to make something out. There was a little overhang just past the doorway. I got on all fours and crawled forward, shining my flashlight around me. Max's moans didn't cease. "Don't worry, bro. I'm gonna come get you." I didn't really believe in the words I was saying. That wasn't until I noticed something in the overhang. Just to my left, it went down, but when I looked closely, I saw that the drop was only a few centimeters. I slithered to my left and tried to follow the small drop. Indeed, just past the first one followed another similar decrease. Steps. They were hard to make out, seeing as the floor was as black as its surroundings, but the texture was different. They didn't particularly leave a lot of room to actually stand on, explaining why Max had so easily stumbled past them into the opening. If I was careful enough, I could manage my way down. So, I stood up and took my first few steps deeper into the void. My flashlight is my only companion. Every move felt like a gamble. Would I reach the next step, stumble, or completely lose my balance and fall into the hole? I made damn sure to hug the wall, clearly curved. It must have been a circle, and a massive one at that. While I couldn't make out the door where I came from, I quickly noticed that it took a lot longer to traverse the staircase than I'd imagined. One more step and suddenly I fell. I either missed a step or there was none. Everything looked the same, like nothing. I almost felt weightless, like drifting through the cosmos. There was no sound and almost no draft of air resisting my falling body. If not for my apparent ability to breathe and scream, you could be fooled into thinking this whole structure was housing a dark vacuum ready to swallow any outside life into its empty space. I screamed and screamed as I fell, but the longer I dropped, the less energy I had to scream. Flailing around in desperation, I tried to reach around me in hopes of grasping a ledge, even if it would rip my arms out of their sockets. No luck. I just kept falling down that impossibly deep hole. All I kept thinking was, how could have Max survived the fall? Did I mistake his death screams echoing out as pained groans? But soon I would get my answer. Trying to think back to it, the fall must have taken about 5 minutes, more or less. That kind of distance in the real world would likely see you ending up as a pancake, but in this madhouse, a fall like that simply ended up with a broken phone and you lying on damp concrete, disoriented and sore from a somewhat rough landing. No doubt, my impact still hurt, but I was alive. I tried to sit up. My head was pounding, and I could feel the scrapes all over my body. I stumbled around in the darkness, stumbling over what I felt to be my broken phone. Turning around was like turning in a corn maze. "Max! Max!" I shouted. If he was still alive, he must be able to hear me, right? "Julien?" I heard Max's voice somewhere from my right. "I'm here. Over here." His voice sounded weak and scared. Quickly! I'm coming, bro! I slowly made my way towards the direction his voice came from until I eventually fell over something. Ouch! What the fuck? Max cried out in pain. I scrambled and finally my hands made their way to his shoulder. I couldn't help but give him a hug. I decided not to say it. Bro, I'm hurt. Get off me already, he groaned at me. How long did you fall for? I asked, just to ascertain whether I was making something up. A few good minutes. Honestly, I don't know how I survived, but I landed on my fucking ankle. It's done for, Julien. Well, let me help you. I reached around him and helped him up. Now what? I couldn't see him. The darkness was too powerful, even more suffocating down here. But it felt good to hold him. Know that somebody was there. I tried to force a chuckle and said, Original exit is not an option anymore. I don't know why, but I could feel Max staring daggers at me. He sighed and said, Let's walk in one direction, find a wall, and walk around. Like in a maze. What? The best way to escape a maze is to pick a wall and stick to it no matter what. Sooner or later, you will find an exit, I explained. Makes sense. Where'd you hear that? Internet. Spent a lot of time there. I figured. What does the internet say about impossible fucking black hellscapes? Don't go in. I fucking hate you, Max said. Something dropped in my stomach. That feeling of having disappointed someone you hold dearly. I asked. Do you mean that? Max snorted and responded, Depends on if we make it out of here, buddy. We walked and walked. Max's phone also broke, so we just had to commit to a direction and hope for the best. We kept going strong, but soon both our bodies became weary. We became thirsty and hungry, and our bruised cells were starting to slow down. Every moment, we were hoping to just run into a wall and break our noses, shouting in pain and joy, but that stop never came. We barely said a word to each other, just holding out our arms around us. I was the first to break down, almost taking Max along with me on my way to my knees. I couldn't help but start sobbing. There was a constant back and forth in my head, as my mind raced from each moment I fucked up and what I should have done better. Never should have entered the building. Never should have forced Max to come with me. Should have run out and asked for help when he fell. I should have never come back. A dark thought passed through. If I had died in Canada, my parents wouldn't have known of it for some time, staying blissfully ignorant and happy, thinking that their son was trying their best. If I were to disappear in these woods, in this hole, it wouldn't take them as long. Their devastation, sorrow, and grief would come much quicker. Again, when I think about it now, it seems like a strange line of reasoning, but in the end, I know now, as I did then, what my mind was trying to tell me. You've fucked up. Max tried to console me. Don't worry, we're going to make it. Other people have seen this place. Maybe someone will come and find us. I'm sorry, was all I could get out. I know, buddy. This time Max held me. And so we just remained there for a bit, hugging it out, trying to get some relief out of our situation. We would venture onwards, the reality dawning on us that the bottom of this hole was larger than we could have imagined. At some point, we just couldn't take it anymore. Exhausted, we decided to take a break and sat down. Max took his jacket, bundled it up, and used it as a pillow to raise his ankle. I couldn't help but look around, knowing I wouldn't make out anything. Eventually, my head felt weary, and I followed Max's idea and used my jacket as a pillow. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm tired," I responded. "Yes. Fall asleep." "Hey, don't judge me. You sat down first," Max said. I didn't say anything." As if electrocuted, every hair on my body stood up and I became tense, my eyes staring widely into the abyss above me. "What?" I asked. "I didn't say anything," Max answered. We both stood up, gripping our jackets and each other. "Just rest," the voice said again. It was close, somewhere around us. It sounded human and comforting, but upon hearing it again, it was clear that it wasn't mine or Max's. We started turning in circles, on guard for anything to come out at us. Max whispered, "I say we run as fast as we can." "Got it." The voice appeared again. "Don't run. Be with me." It sent a shudder down our spines. It was different this time. Before it was a male voice, now it sounded like the soothing tone of a mother tucking you into bed at night. "Go!" Max shouted as we booked it. Admittedly, given our circumstances, we could have known it was pointless, but our need to survive took over. We ran as fast as we could, as fast as our tired legs allowed us. Max's ankle wasn't helping. Then, there it was. In the distance, we saw a light. There was hope, and that propelled us to pick up the pace a little. Arm in arm, we made our way towards the bright spot in the distance. I could hear Max's moans get increasingly more severe. He wouldn't be able to take much more. Then the light moved, ever so slightly. I stopped us in our tracks. "Shh," I said to Max. The light almost danced, left to right and up and down. We couldn't help but follow it. As it danced, it became bigger and brighter. "Oh, shit," Max whispered. We hunkered down, but we knew it was too late. It was moving towards us. "Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, my fucking God." Max was losing it. I slapped his shoulder. "Get it together." With the light, a figure appeared in the darkness. It followed the light, almost floating towards us. We had to shield our eyes from the bobbing ball that illuminated us. We had been in the dark so long that it felt like we were looking into the sun. The orb moved to be just above us, and the figure stopped about 2 or 3 meters from us, its back still covered in darkness. It looked like a woman, pale yet beautiful and naked. "Please stay," she said. "I'll make you comfortable." Max shouted, "Just let us leave! Please!" The figure receded back into the darkness and reappeared behind us, now a man, just as pale and handsome. Max gripped me harder. I asked, "How many are you?" The man responded, "Only one. But I can be many." It looked at me and tilted its head. "Why did you come here?" "We wanted to explore," I said. "You did. Your friend did not." My heart froze over, but Max tapped my shoulder. "I wouldn't just abandon my friend like that." The creature moved closer to Max. "I don't want you. You are no good to me anymore." Something came from the darkness and snatched Max. Even with the light, I couldn't make it out. A black mass entangled Max's legs and lifted him up. I managed to hold on to him, and a tug of war began, all while Max was screaming. It nearly got dragged with him, but after a while he seemed to have been released and dropped back to the floor. This time he hit his head and was knocked out cold. I checked on him, but apart from a pulse and shallow breathing, there was no response. "Curious," the man said. "The way you fight back. Maybe I misjudged you." It came closer again. I could hear a large mass dragging and a foul smell emanating from the man's direction. I had to cover my nose for a second. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Your darkness. It gives me pleasure." "What darkness? Why were you drawn to this place? Why wasn't your friend?" "I just wanted to explore, wanted to do something." "Yes. But didn't this place strike you as unusual?" I looked down. "Yes. You embrace the darkness. Why?" "You seem to know why." There was a guttural sound, profoundly unsettling and unholy. It sounded like laughter. Once again the figure vanished and appeared beside me, now a young woman, closer to my age. "You want to stay here, don't you? Let the darkness around you match the one inside your mind." My hands became fists. "What are you talking about?" "Do you really care where you are? The end would just be the same and just as welcomed. Your parents would be devastated either way." I twitched slightly. Did it know what I was thinking? "I don't want to fucking die." "But you don't care if you do," it responded, and it was right. My body went limp, and again there was that unnatural laughter. The girl took a deep breath and smiled. "Ah, yes. Despair. Humans are full of it." "Human? What are you?" The figure smiled, and the orb lowered to be just above my head. My eyes widened. As I followed it, I could see a long, thin stretch of skin elongate towards the figure, which was now raised up in the air, and now in front of me were eyes, large, black, too many to count, paired with one enormous row of sharp teeth. That was about as much as I could and wanted to make out. It spoke again, its maw unmoving, and its voice a cacophony of seemingly thousands of different people speaking in unison. See me. I wanted to run, but I knew it was futile. Besides, Max was still lying by my feet. I wouldn't just leave him with this monster. I couldn't help, but my body began to shake, and I was beginning to hyperventilate. Yes. The creature droned, all its eyes fixed on me. Kneeling down, I felt the darkness encroach on me. What could it do? Should I just submit? Maybe I could bargain to save Max and at least do one good thing with my life. I thought about it. In the end, what would happen if I made it out of this? Nothing good. I would be back to my same old miserable life, only now with the knowledge that creatures like this exist. What if this wasn't the only one? What if there were more? Why did I have to go inside? Why? My mind was spiraling once again. I could feel the monster drawing closer, soaking in my misery. Why wouldn't it just take me? Why make me choose? Was it savoring me? I asked. Why not just get it over with? Simple. Your total submission is the ultimate meal. The only way to make you mine. What if I refuse? It laughed, and its whole mass was shaking. I am older than your human history could ever conceive. I will wait. Others will come, and one day you will find your way back to me. I'm not bound here. I live in your darkness. That's it? I couldn't believe it, trying to hide my fear in a simple response. That's it. You will remember me. He won't. You will come back to me. Of that, I have no doubt. My darkness will always be there to comfort you. I took another look at Max and remembered the way he initially asked me to come out, and now here he is, stuck with me and this abomination. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but smile. He really was there for me. I want to leave. You're just another thing in my life. Another thing I will get over just like I always do. The creature drew back a little, but I could make out how its teeth were forming a smile. So be it, it said, and suddenly everything went dark. And just like that, there was light again. I was lying on the concrete floor in a room filled with a huge generator and other electrical boxes. Just ahead of me was light, not some false promise, but sunlight. It was the door I'd broken down earlier, illuminating my face. In the end, unobscured by some kind of eldritch magic, it really had just been a small building to do with the power grid. Max was next to me, also waking up. What the fuck happened? How did we fall asleep, and why do we look like shit? He asked. I was almost relieved. I didn't want him to remember, but I also didn't have an adequate explanation. I simply helped him up. His ankle was still messed up, and we humped out back into the forest. It couldn't have been more than maybe a few hours, if even. The sun had barely moved. I helped him back to my house, where I called him an ambulance to look at his injury. The entire time he was asking questions, I had no answer. I simply said that he tripped on a loose wire, twisted his ankle, and took me with him. He didn't believe me, but he also didn't press further. I don't think he ever really trusted me after that. Again, I could live with that. I had other concerns, and I was happy that he didn't have to live with what I had dragged him into. While I would like to say it ended there, it wasn't quite so. What we went through and what I had made Max endure, the memory of it, or not, stayed with me, sending daggers through my heart. Then there was the unavoidable reality of what that monster had said to me. I tried to forget and move on. I even went back to Canada trying to pick up my life. But I began having nightmares, constantly avoiding dark spaces and sleeping with all my lights on. I recently even started going to therapy. It was less to get better, but almost more as a declaration of a fight. That thing would not see me again. I had to get better. Well, I still don't have a job, which is partly why I'm writing this here, seeing what others have witnessed here. Made me think it was as good a place as any to tell my story. Therapy helped a little, but my life is still not what I wanted it to be. But I'm trying to stay positive. Yet, I'm afraid. What if I'm just lying to myself? Every time I feel my inner void getting the best of me, I try to think back. I think back to my family accepting me as I am, and how my friend decided to follow me into a hellhole just because he didn't want to leave me alone. Recently, I decided to take a walk through the local park, during the day, of course. Passing by the bathrooms, my eyes drifted, and instead of the halogen lamps, I only saw darkness. I've convinced myself that it was stress, some kind of PTSD, but I can't be sure. I put my head down and kept walking. So here's a bit of advice. Be happy. Trust me, I know it's hard, but there's always something. Find things to be happy about. Because if you don't, something else might find you instead.